What's up, guys? It is Wednesday, October 9th. This week on the podcast, my friend Lane Huitt joins me to discuss crypto art, crypto philosophy, and a number of other things. This is an episode we filmed a little while back in person, so the audio might not be completely up to par. With that said, it's still a great episode. We talk a lot about art for about the first 10 minutes, and then at about 11:30, we really start jumping into crypto. So if you want to skip ahead to about 11:30 or so, go ahead. As always, be sure to share this episode with somebody that you think would like to learn more about crypto and blockchain. Enjoy.
This is the BlockHash Podcast.
How you doing, man?
I'm good.
Good.
It's really hot.
It is really hot because we're sitting in a warehouse full of mining rigs that are loud and produce a lot of heat. So it's kind of sucks, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Yeah, it happens.
So, anyways, thanks for coming on the podcast and stopping by and doing this in person. Cause I don't think I've done one in person quite yet, so we're kind of like testing some of the waters here to see how it goes. But yeah, tell me a little bit about your background, kind of what you're doing. I know you do a lot with art and stuff, so like, just tell me a little bit about Lane Huitt.
All right. Well, my background's a little bit all over the place, but I consider myself an artist, entrepreneur type. I've been focusing a lot on building a body of work right now, which, if you don't know what that is, it's usually like 20 to 30 different pieces of art that are developing the same theme that you can then put in a portfolio and present to galleries with and different collectors. And on top of that, I've been in transition to Chicago, which is quite a change from the sleepy little Central Oregon that I've grown up in.
And when are you moving to Chicago?
In October 1st.
Very cool.
So very soon.
Very cool. So you're getting out of here pretty soon. Are you taking like your work with you, or are you selling it off and then doing something in Chicago? Like what's the game plan?
A little bit of both. I'm probably going to put a lot of them in tubes. So take them off the frame and then you roll them up and move them around a lot easier. Because other than that, it turns into a big hassle with all the canvas stretched.
Yeah,
so that's the plan. And then basically continuing doing what I'm doing. I've got this new podcast. So the podcast is an art podcast called Lane Huitt's Canvas Shop. And I chose the name not only because it's in the shop where I stretch canvas, but it's also kind of like the blank canvas is essentially the philosophical point of like the largest potential. So I kind of like exploring that theme a little bit. Talked to a few different artists so far, and I did a podcast on crypto voxels.
I saw that one. It's very cool.
Nice.
I also saw the video you did too. You're walking around in crypto voxels. That was also pretty cool. I actually got some laughs out of that one. It was entertaining.
Nice. That was the goal. I hit a couple roadblocks purchasing my plot of land, which I guess they weren't roadblocks, it just took a while for it to change. But it's like a 30-minute video that I spent, I don't know, like 3 hours making, trying to figure out what happened.
That's how it goes though sometimes, like those videos, I mean, I've made a lot of them, but like the whole like post-editing and everything, it takes forever, and you're just like, why is it taking so long? Despite the video being so short, and like I have the same issue with like podcasts. Like I record like a podcast, it might be an hour long, but it takes me like at least 2 hours to fully like edit it and then like get it put together correctly and get it formatted correctly. I'm just like, this is so not right.
I avoid editing at all costs. I just throw some intro music in there, and that's about it.
I could tell. Yeah, you minimize the editing quite a bit, but I mean, there's no like right or wrong way to do it. For me, it's nice to like hear the conversation, because I got some cool guests that come on every once in a while, and I want to make sure that you can like understand them like crystal clear. You know exactly what their message is. It stays as on track as possible. So I spend a lot of time editing to make sure that it kind of follows like a script as much as possible, so people know what they're doing, what they're talking about, so it's explained really well. I mean, there's plenty of podcasters completely go off the rails on purpose and do whatever the hell they want, and they're very successful. So I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it. I think it kind of just depends on the format of what you're doing in terms of podcasting. So I mean, for me, that's just kind of how I roll with it.
Yeah, I can see there's a lot of pros to that. I try to keep it a little loose.
That's good. I'm not like a huge art guy, but like, what type of art are you doing specifically? Because I know we've talked about it a little bit, but maybe for the audience, you can kind of explain like what your style is, like artistically.
Okay, that's great. I've spent months figuring out what I've been doing. Mm-hmm. I would describe it as kind of like classical aestheticism with
what's that?
With a pointillist style. So I guess short history on art is you have classical art, which encompasses anywhere from like 2,000 to 4,000 years of history, basically up until the 17th, 18th century, somewhere in there. And the main themes of classical art is like the purpose is to bring you into the image and show you a scene where you can kind of sit there for a while and figure out what's happening, and you can picture religious art packed full with a lot of symbolism and a lot of different ideas that you can really like admire for a lifetime in a lot of cases. Then eventually the shift from classicalism landed into something that's loosely termed aestheticism, which is when you start getting like seascapes and, I'm forgetting the word, but other landscapes and certain things that just kind of look cool, that people enjoy looking at, that there's not particularly messages hidden within the painting itself. Like if you ever look at a Bosch painting, but they look like a madman's painting, and chances are that he was a little crazy.
It's just like crazy, like makes no sense. Like
he has he's been super enigmatic for like 500 years. I think he was from Holland in the 15th century, somewhere in there. And he has one painting called like the Garden of Earthly Desires or something like that, and it's just full of there's earth scenes, and then there's hell in one corner.
Jeez. And
it's chocked full of like all these different images people have been perplexed by forever. And I just listened to a documentary on that, which was pretty cool. Apparently he probably believed that polyphonic music was from the devil. So in his picture of hell, there's a bunch of instruments, and there's like musical notes written on someone's body that like this satanic creature is reading. And so
this is all very weird.
Yeah, that's just a good example of what classical art is. It's full of a lot of imagery, and then aestheticism, and then modern art came out of that, and then you get a lot of non-formal, non-figurative sort of Jackson Pollock stuff. So I'm mixing the two. I like the imagery that classical art tends to evoke and how it kind of like invites you into the scene to figure out what's going on. But I also like the really expressionistic kind of scenery or feeling that you can get from abstract art, classical aestheticism.
I don't know if I will remember like all those definitions, but it definitely sounds really interesting for sure. And I've seen a lot of your artwork, a lot of different things that you've kind of put together and made. What are some of the like, we don't have to go through like all of them for sure, but like the favorite ones, the ones that you like the most, like what, like some of the symbolism behind it, or some of the things that, or something that you took from to make those, or like the inspiration, I guess was the word I'm looking for some of those.
Yeah, so I have one called Madame Psychosis, which is
Sounds crazy.
it's an infinite jest nod because I've been stuck in that book for ages.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the imagery that I used in a painting that I just saw at some point. It's of a man and a woman in the midst of a wave, and the guy's kind of like pulling her up, but they're both in the water. He's just at the top of the wave and she's at the bottom. So I like where that it was kind of vague. They didn't have like much of a reference point to it. So I put that in one of my paintings. That turned out really well. And that one's one that I've tried to develop a little bit of a circular feeling to it.
Right.
Because circles are cool, man.
Circles are cool. Circles are hard to do.
Yeah.
Like, I have to admit, like, unless you have like a protractor or something, like making a perfect circle is ridiculously hard.
Yeah.
There's some artistic skill to drawing the perfect circle. Like, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that could be like its whole art genre.
Probably. There's a lot of people that have explored it. And I just also enjoy the psychological significance of like wholeness.
Mm.
I feel like it just translates well on a canvas. It's kind of welcoming in a way. And so there's that one, and then another one I'm calling Franny, which is loosely based off of a painting, a neoclassical painting called Franny before the Areopagus.
Interesting.
Which is based off of a Greek myth about basically a virtuous prostitute that...
A virtuous prostitute.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Sure. I guess in Greece.
A prostitute with good virtues? That's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Moving
it's
on.
it's quite the myth for sure. And yeah, those are the two that most stick out to me.
I also know that, and we've worked on a lot of this together, you've been creating NFTs for your artwork, and there aren't like a whole lot of people actually creating really good NFT artwork. It's still like relatively new, like the whole NFT space in general, but I know you've been starting to create some as well. We did a canvas together that was pretty cool, that I'm putting out very slowly. What direction are you thinking about going? Are you going to keep exploring your ability to put out art as like an NFT, like on OpenSea or on Super Rare or on Additional, and kind of take your artistic sovereignty with you, or are you looking to do some more like physical canvases, or like both, or none, or I don't know, like what's the future looking like for Lane's artwork?
Yeah, I think I'll do a little bit of both. Like a GIF file is basically a flip book.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been kind of exploring how to do that on a canvas, and you can take pictures at different stages and make it
Right.
a moving picture. I've figured out that that's very difficult.
It is.
Especially when, for one piece that I had, I think I was compiling between 150 to 200 images, and it definitely broke Photoshop a couple times. It would just freeze up because that's like it's like a 50 gigabyte file before it gets
I actually figured out a couple tricks. Like I'm definitely not artistic, so I'm never gonna do it again because it just kind of sucks. But I figured out a couple of ways to kind of cheat that a little bit. Like Canva, like I use Canva for everything, but you can like make multiple duplicates in a single like sheet on Canva. So you can like have multiple pages, and then you can like duplicate whatever your work is like on every single page, and then you can change it just a little bit to make it like this open flip book, and then you can take all those and you can save them as individual pictures, and then you can run those pictures through some online generator. They'll turn it into a GIF for you. That's probably like the easiest way to do it. That's how I was doing it, because I'm not like overly techie or overly nerdy when it comes to like software stuff, but I do know how to use Google. So and there's a lot of generators out there that'll do like very simple steps for you. So that was actually really helpful a little bit. You might actually like using Canva too. It's great for all kinds of things.
Yeah, it sounds like that would cut a lot of work out of it. I'm not very especially techie
Yeah.
in that realm either.
I guess we're in the same boat on that.
I've got a friend that's like a Photoshop wizard,
Yeah.
but he charges me money now.
See, like, I have thought about like getting certain kinds of software for like audio, for like podcasts, and then like I don't even know what they're called. Like that's how like out of the loop I am. And then for like photos and videos, but like everything I can do like on basic Mac software like GarageBand or iMovie, it works great for me. Like I don't see the point in going and spending all the extra money on software that just adds a little bit of detail, a little bit of difference. I'm not working in Hollywood here.
Yeah.
Like I'm putting stuff on YouTube or I'm putting stuff up for my podcast. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. So
Yeah, I know a lot of those like Photoshop or Blender, they're super powerful for when you know what you want specifically.
right. And you know, for somebody that's fantastic. Like I'm telling you, I can compete with you using GarageBand and iMovie just fine.
Yeah, the simpler tools are often the best.
Right. I feel like you overthink it. Like it needs just a little bit more tints. The saturation's a little too high, and I'm like, who cares? Like
It takes a long time to develop that
you can
eye.
see me in the photo. I can see me in the photo. We're good, right? Like I try not to overthink that part too much.
More on the NFT thing. I think it's really cool. Like I listen to your podcast with Fanny and Lakabai. I'm gonna guess. Lakubai.
Please don't kill me if I say your name right. I'm doing my best here. No, she was awesome.
Yeah.
Loved having her on. We had a great conversation. And then she run the additional app and everything. She's kind of behind that and a number of other things. She's like very, very busy woman, doing awesome. And I use the additional app a lot too. It's really easy like to like take a picture or something or upload your picture and then turn that into an NFT on your phone, which is really great because I can do the same thing on OpenSea directly, which is also really great. But like kind of when you're like on the go and you just want to like grab like something there and then with your phone, it's awesome because you can immediately becomes an NFT, is on the blockchain, ready to be collected, sold, traded, whatever. So yeah, I love what she's doing.
Yeah, I'm really excited to check out Additional whenever they put out Android.
Yeah, you guys gotta get to work on that.
But yeah, so she brought something to my attention that I thought was pretty cool with how creating editions of digital art. I had never really thought about that before, how digital artists were kind of, they had their hands tied from just the nature of the internet and sharing things. You kind of couldn't really sell it.
Right.
Or make it a limited edition. It could be duplicated thousands of times. So that's something I really appreciate. I've never made digital art before. Well, I take that back. I have, but never purely digital, just digitized.
Sure. On blockchain.
Yeah.
It's cool. I mean, I've talked about this probably a billion times already on the podcast with a number of people, but for artists, for creators, musicians, you name it, anyone that's an artist in any field, the ability to take control of your work and to have complete control of your royalty, of monetization, of your own distribution on a platform. It's huge in an industry where they get screwed every single day. And I don't know what that experience is like for like a painter or someone that makes a canvas, but I know for like musicians it's awful. They're getting screwed when it comes to royalties.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to being an artist, there's a lot of benefits to putting your work on the blockchain, and in this case on Additional or on OpenSea directly, or on other mediums that are prevalent and coming out as well. It's just a good fit in general for artists, so glad to see that you're using it too.
Yeah, dipping my toes in at least. Yeah. I've got a friend of mine who says he's not involved in cryptocurrency, but he loves it. He thinks it's the most punk rock thing ever.
Interesting.
Because it's super anti-establishment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of like taking your power back to an extent.
Yeah, speaking of in the crypto industry in general, like, what's your opinion on it? Like, what do you think about, well, let's synthesize it a little bit, because that's actually kind of a broad question. But let's start with Bitcoin. As an artist, as someone that's kind of, sort of recently kind of involved in it, what do you think of Bitcoin, and do you think it has a future?
I think so. Even if it's like, my assumption would be that Bitcoin's gonna survive and it's not gonna be replaced by something just because of its status and how it was kind of there first.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you can modify the network through Lightning Network stuff that I've heard about.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a good thing. Probably, you'd know more than me, but I feel like it probably won't get too outdated for people to just not be able to use it at some point in time.
Right. Well, I mean, like with like the Lightning Network and stuff, that definitely helps it scale in terms of its transactions and its ability to be used by millions, if not a billion people at some point, which is very, very important if it wants to be used on a mass scale. So Lightning Network is fantastic. They're growing every day. It's great for Bitcoin in general. So it's a huge positive. I think at least for me personally, the biggest thing that gives Bitcoin value is just the fact that it has this symbolism attached to it.
Oh yeah.
And as an artist, maybe you can relate to this a little bit, but Bitcoin is almost like a digital piece of art in a lot of ways, because when people see it, it represents something. What does it represent? It represents individuality. It represents freedom for a collective, yet also for the individual at the same time. Sovereignty. For a lot of people, it's anti-government. It's anti-banks, which is kind of where it was born out of the recession. So I think a lot of that over the years has given Bitcoin quite a lot of value. And it's interesting too. I mean, I think people really overlook that aspect. Like, they want to find something physical about it that gives it value. Mm-hmm. They want to find something economically that gives it value. Like, what gives gold value, or what may or may not give a US dollar value. I think they're looking in the wrong place. I mean, with Bitcoin, it's technological advancement of money. The same way the car is the technological advancement of the horse, right? Mm-hmm. Or an email is the technological advancement of the letter. And for communication, I mean, you could look at the phone, and we could go on and on. Like, if you look at it carefully, Bitcoin really does represent a technological jump in terms of money for the first time in thousands of years, away from gold. Not that gold is bad or anything, but I just think that symbolism that it has and what it represents is really, really strong. And I think it gets overlooked quite a lot.
Oh yeah. And I think that segues pretty nicely into an actual physical thing about Bitcoin, and it's one of the cultural markers of something that has weight and is probably coming on a larger scale, is the emotional reaction you get out of people when you mention Bitcoin. I feel like more often than not, you get someone who's kind of like, they start changing their body posture a little bit, and they're like, I don't know if I want to talk about that, that Bitcoin stuff. And when something's highly disruptive, it definitely has that effect.
Right.
Like even with abstract art, that was a big thing. A lot of classical painters or classically trained painters would not be happy about it. And I mean, obviously it's became a huge thing. Like Jackson Pollock paintings are worth millions of dollars. And the same sort of thing happened with novels. You can look up like old articles written about people criticizing novels and how it's a womanly sort of thing to do and it's a waste of time. And then it comes around and has a huge cultural impact.
It's an interesting parallel. I wonder if you could look at Bitcoin as a novel, like a monetary novel telling a story over like the last 10 years. Now we're getting really philosophical here.
Yeah, I have a tendency to do that.
No, that's fine. That's great. We need more people like that, and we need to encourage more people like that. 'Cause great ideas come from people that are great thinkers, right? So
probably
you gotta think a little crazy every once in a while.
I was wondering before I came here, did you ever run into I think it was an NSA article that they wrote that was called How to Make a Mint?
I did not. Is that new?
No, it came out in the late or mid 90s or something like that. And it was about cryptocurrency. It was titled something like How to Make a Mint.
Like online?
Like using cryptographic sort of signatures
Yeah.
and computers and peer-to-peer networks.
Well, you got to remember that the internet, when it first came out, it was a DARPA program. The internet was a government program. It wasn't created by Silicon Valley like most things are today. That's the only reason that we really have the internet and have actually gotten the infrastructure for it, and then over time developed it out and it's commercialized and whatnot now. But I've had that theory for a while, like Bitcoin could have been a government project at some point. I mean, no offense to Satoshi, whoever he, she, or they, or what it may be, you just don't know.
No.
Like, you really don't. I mean, there is a possibility that Satoshi could be a pseudonym for the CIA or for the NSA or for DARPA, I don't know. Or that just it was a government program that built Bitcoin. It's a possibility. So I wouldn't be surprised to hear that there's an article like that out there. The government has kind of had programs to explore all kinds of things for a very long time, like well before they ever became mainstream buy it at Best Buy products.
Yeah.
So I mean, who do you think is really innovating with the inflated cash? Is it the government, or is it Best Buy, or is it Silicon Valley? It's the government.
Yeah.
Like they're thinking about this stuff way ahead of time, but the government's not putting it in Best Buy, not putting it in Target for you to buy. I mean, obviously the technology gets out and gets developed and whatnot. So
yeah, the best story I could come up with, and what I'm hoping is true, is that someone working on that project was like, man, someone should really do this, but I would get busted.
So like an Edward Snowden type situation.
Yeah.
That's possible too. I mean, I doubt we'd ever hear that story, unfortunately. And you know what? I think what gives Bitcoin so much more value also towards symbolism is the fact that we don't know who Satoshi is. And that's the best part. Like, if you want something like Bitcoin to work and you want it to truly be decentralized, there has to be no creator. Maybe, I don't know if, for me, that's the hardest part with buying into the government theory of it, because the government would want to control it and the government would want to enforce it. Like, why would the government create something that would be anti-government? It just doesn't make sense to me. They wouldn't create a decentralized system that they can't stop or they can't control. And it's very clear with how Bitcoin works when you look at it that it's very unlikely that a government would have created it, or our government, or whatever. Satoshi Nakamoto was a physical person or group, or it was the aliens. Who knows? So it's one of those. That's my top picks when it comes to Satoshi.
Yeah, it's a super compelling story. I would hope that the full thing comes out within our lifetimes. That would be a cool documentary.
I hope we never learn who Satoshi is, just because it adds to the symbolism behind Bitcoin. I do want Bitcoin to succeed. I wouldn't be necessarily unhappy if it didn't succeed either. I know it's going, some form of cryptographic currency, whether it's Bitcoin or something else, will succeed.
Well, there's a lot of just pure geniuses working on projects all over the place.
Absolutely.
And that lends to a lot, Elon Musk starting Tesla. One of the most irrational things you could do on paper is start an independent car company with electrical cars.
And then say you want to shoot rockets, right?
Yeah, and then go into the private space industry.
Yeah, so he definitely stretches the bill a little bit for sure, but he definitely has a way of kind of figuring it out. And he's a smart guy. Elon Musk is absolutely brilliant in so many ways, and is a genius and innovator, and I don't know, he's an interesting guy. I know some people that think he might be Satoshi too, and he just won't admit it. It's very possible. I don't think it's him, but it's a good guess.
I don't know. You would have to like cross-reference the amount of time that he's spending on other companies.
I think he's too busy to be that kind of a guy. So
he is. I mean, you remember how people bought that couch for him?
Mm-hmm.
On, I don't know. I think they started a GoFundMe because he was just sleeping at SpaceX or Tesla or something.
Yeah, and they crowdfunded a couch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's cool is there's gonna be. I mean, this is totally opinion, but I feel like there's going to be a few companies like PayPal, which are started by super young people in the cryptocurrency sphere. Because I know one of the people you interviewed too, getting out of high school or something just like a couple years ago. I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah, I've had so many interviews lately with so many people. I'm kind of spaced in that. So and I think in almost every podcast we almost always bring up VR. Like it just kind of goes that direction somehow.
Yeah, but at any rate, there's so many young, smart people that are just going to be involved in it for a long time.
Mm-hmm. You know, you're kind of already seeing that. Like you have Coinbase, obviously, which is like the crypto equivalent of what PayPal was in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Then you got the Winklevoss twins with Gemini. They're really pushing that, and that's growing tremendously. Guys really kind of pushing the bill with like Binance and Bittrex. I don't know. The industry's getting really interesting. The biggest X factor is what are these big exchanges going to do when the decentralized atomic swaps kick in? Which you can start to do now already. But like when they're in full swing and all you have to do is go to a website to exchange your crypto. You just punch in your output address and put in their address into your input, and then boom, it instantaneously swaps for you whatever you want. Bitcoin to Ethereum, Ethereum to Litecoin, on and on and on. And there's no record to be kept. There's no one in the middle that they can go after. No easy way to shut the site down. This goes against the grain for all the exchanges that are out there. Mm-hmm. I mean, other than custody, which no one really wants to do in the crypto space unless they're doing business, these exchanges are going to have a real problem. Because with the decentralized exchanges, you don't need Bittrex, you don't need Binance. That model falls apart. And you start to not necessarily need Coinbase or Gemini or others that are very similar unless you're a big corporation or unless you're a business that like every day needs to prove custody and have like a ledger of transactions and whatnot, which you'll be able to do anyways without them. But these centralized exchanges are going to definitely be a big factor.
I mean, it basically is their business model now.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure they'll have a first to market advantage and a lot of contacts and a lot of people, a lot of big corporations to work with through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of reminds me of like the most exciting thing to cryptocurrency for me is the different applications from like healthcare records, I don't know, like facilitating transactions. I know that might become outdated with if cryptocurrency.
Yeah, there's a lot of use
fully
cases
adopted.
for blockchain.
Yeah, but kind of like, I think what XRP or Ripple or I'm not up to date in whatever sort of things happening between those two, but whatever they were trying to do, I originally remember it as like moving big amounts of money from country to country, that sort of stuff. And the NFT space.
No, I think regarding Ripple, I know that project gets a lot of flack for being somewhat centralized. But I mean, Ripple's not a bad project. Like the technology behind it is pretty damn good. It's really fast. They've been in the market a long time. They've gone through lawsuits. They're battle tested in a lot of ways. Yeah, they do a lot of PR stuff. Yeah, they're consistently working with banks, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think where people in this industry go wrong is they get highly polarized towards being decentralized, if that makes sense. Like, whereas any type of centralized blockchain is almost a bad thing, and that's just absolutely absurd. There are tons of reasons why you need a centralized or private blockchain or sidechain. Just look at a corporation that might need a blockchain within the organization to protect information and IP and have efficiency, but no one else would be able to get into it. Or for centralized purposes, it's not a bad thing for the government. It's not a bad thing for some corporations. Have a process for putting voting on a blockchain and kind of controlling that a little bit. I don't know, there's tons of use cases, but saying that like centralization is a bad thing is wrong.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily bad, it's just who the actor is. I hate it when people do that. I hate it when it drives me nuts all the time. Like you're shutting yourself off to opportunity, you're shutting yourself off to technological possibility.
Yeah, well, you can easily draw a parallel between like cash and a credit card. Like with cash, it's you got to take care of it.
Right.
Like you can lose it can roll down the street and you'll never see some $100 bills again. Or you can have it on a credit card and you're not really going to lose that money. It's a lot more secure and insured and things like that.
The problem with a credit card, though, is you have to put it in the bank first. Let's just use a debit card, for example.
Yeah.
To use your debit card, which is more convenient than your cash, you have to put your money in the bank. The bank then loans out 90% of your dollar. And then everything you're spending practically is bank credit. And yes, you could go back to the bank today and get that reasonable amount of money back out. But if everyone went back to the bank, you're not going to get your money because they don't have it. Yeah. That's the major problem with our banks. And then using a credit card is just even worse because now you're just using more credit. Credit that isn't even backed by the money in the first place. So it's face value, like a debit card or a credit card seems like a better solution, and it has been a better solution in the short run. But in the long run, that's why we're in a credit crisis. That's why we're in a huge debt bubble.
Well, and then you have things like Venezuela that happens, where the inflation's so bad that your credit limit can't keep up on your credit card, and you're maxing out just to get groceries and stuff. That's pretty dystopian and scary.
And I mean, not everybody is responsible with their credit card too. So like thinking that we live in a perfect world where everyone's going to use a minimal amount on their credit card and pay it back monthly and have a stable job, and it's not realistic. So it just creates more problems, and every time that happens, it just piles on and piles on. So.
But I know at least in my area of expertise, like both sides of this, the cryptocurrency, decentralized, sort of digital side versus the legacy museums, galleries, traditional artists, like there needs to be a conversation. Otherwise it's going to get siloed. Well, it's going to stay how it is with primarily like just digital artists exploring the digital side of it, and physical artists just sticking to their galleries and whatnot.
Let's talk about that a little bit more though. Like what's the conversation that needs to be talked about?
So I think like implementation of the different possibilities that virtual reality and NFTs brings up. Like I know I heard, bringing back to another Josie that you had on your podcast talking
Josie
about.
She's great.
Yeah, she's talking about doing the show where there's just white walls and you walk around in VR. That's super cool, and I doubt that many people that are like involved in museums and stuff know about that. And I think that they totally should, because there's a lot of cool areas for collaboration. Like you never know if the Museum of Contemporary Art in New York is gonna like have an NFT exhibit. And they totally could, because they've had video game exhibits and that sort of stuff. Like
I'll tell you what, it only takes one though. It only takes one exhibit or one art piece to spark massive interest in wanting to do that. So I know Josie's working very hard on it and trying to do something like that. I know a number of people, especially that have been on the podcast, are trying to do similar stuff as well. And I'm telling you, it only takes one time, and when that happens, all of Chicago's going to want to do it. Everywhere in the U.S., they're going to want to do it.
Yeah, I think
Different places around the world, they're going to want to do it. There's just so many opportunities. Like, why wouldn't you? And I just think there's not enough exposure in the real world outside of like OpenSea for the ordinary artist, the ordinary exhibitor, to like see that you can actually do that.
Well, and then also the people that go to art shows. Like I know, like my girlfriend's family is in finance and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They have no idea that there's like this strange cryptocurrency mashup with art going on. They just know about Bitcoin and that it's super volatile and it's probably a bad investment. And that's about the end of the conversation.
I think everybody at this point has heard about Bitcoin at least one time. At this point in 2019, I've talked to all kinds of people this year about Bitcoin, and I think every single person has said, yeah, I've heard of Bitcoin, at least have heard of Bitcoin. Now, most people are still very unsure what to think about Bitcoin. A lot of people still are unsure how it works, but I mean, it's growing slowly. What's still annoying and it's like really slow to be like understood is that there's other stuff other than Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that it isn't a currency necessarily. Like Ethereum is a platform, a network that you can essentially build on. Yeah, it has a native crypto called Ether, but I mean, Ethereum is not meant to be a form of payment. Ethereum is meant for you to build solutions on. Like with NFTs, like that's one solution that you can use Ethereum for. And you're going to see all kinds of crazy shit pop up over the years with this stuff. But I mean, this industry is so big and so broad, and I'm not surprised that people have only really heard of Bitcoin and still trying to understand just that.
Yeah.
What I'm excited for is for them to realize, and for all these different niche industries to understand, is that there's a lot you can do in the blockchain space, and I'm waiting for them to migrate there. So it's gonna happen. Like, who doesn't want to take control of their art and get paid for it? Like, who doesn't want to use a decentralized social media platform where someone has to pay you something small to like your post or to share your post or comment on it?
Oh, yeah.
Where there's a distribution of wealth in the form of providing value, not just random distribution of wealth, but providing value in return. And I mean, there's all kinds of things. I'm not going to get into it because we could be here all night talking about the different solutions.
It's very punk rock. It's very revolutionary. Like it is.
It's cool too. It's what everyone wants to do is blockchain.
Yeah. There's a big opportunity for a lot of interesting changes and a lot of revolution. Like I could easily see you walking into some sort of like group show at a gallery, and then one person's show is all in like virtual reality. I think that'd be super cool. And then if you walk into a show too, and let's just say you're the prototypical baby boomer, you kind of know how to operate a Mac laptop, and then you see someone over in the corner with some Oculus goggles on going, oh my god, like this is so cool. Like you're probably going to go check it out.
I think what you're going to see with those galleries is a lot of augmented reality and mixed reality solutions more than you will virtual reality, because virtual reality you have to put on a headset and step out of reality. Whereas augmented reality and mixed reality, you take what you're already looking at and you kind of overlay it with the virtual thing. And the augmented one's really simple because all you need is your phone. And I've already showed you a few times. And there's like a Art Vive app or Art Vive V app, or I don't know what it's called. But it's really cool because if someone has created like a GIF or a moving picture, a movie video. Jesus, step back in time for a second.
Moving pictures exist.
Yeah, for their artwork or whatever. And then you use the app, you can, it shows like the animation. And Josie has done a lot of cool stuff with that. I'm sure you've seen that too.
Yeah.
With her artwork. And I think with these galleries, you're going to be able to walk into a blank gallery. They're going to have maybe little indicators in the gallery, and then you hold up your phone or you put on a headset, and all of a sudden the white walls come to life with artwork and are moving and interacting with you. And it might not be individual stuff, it might be like a whole experience, which is crazy too.
Oh yeah. And I think it's just like the next segue with avant-garde art, because you look into a lot of installation pieces, and there was a big movement through the 80s and still going on, but people create whole scenes. Like I was at a show and there was a bed with some sort of melted substance all over it. So people have already been trying to create like spaces. There's what's the word? There's simulated spaces in essence, and it's just. I think it's just the next logical step to dip into some virtual reality.
Of simulated spaces, I know you've been in CryptoVoxels a few times, and for people on the podcast that listen closely, they probably know that I like CryptoVoxels quite a lot. When are we gonna see a Lane Huitt art gallery in CryptoVoxels?
I don't know. It might be a while.
Because you got the NFTs coming, so now that you got the NFTs, you can display them.
Yeah.
So you're like halfway there. Now we gotta get you in world so people that are walking around can like see it, bring it to like a different level.
I mean, technically, it is my art gallery because I have one NFT piece up in there.
Oh, okay.
But to be honest, there's so many art galleries.
There are.
I'm like, how do I do something new with this and change it up a little bit?
You got to stick out. You got to hack it a little bit. You got to stick out. Like I know what's really popular lately is putting something on the roof. So like when you're in CryptoVoxels and you're at your parcel and you're building your parcel, build out a roof for it, because when people go to CryptoVoxels, they don't necessarily know where to go, so they go to the map. Most people go to the map. And then on the map, they can see all the parcels, but they can also see the roofs for all the parcels. So what a lot of us have done is like put our names or our Instagram or Twitter handles on there, or we've put Josie has put her artwork on her roof. There's all kinds of like different things on different roofs that kind of like grab your attention and make you say, oh, I want to go there. So I mean, that could be one thing you could do too. You could probably take one of your art pieces and do something with it and like put it like on the roof or something.
Yeah, I have an open roof right now, but it's 2 stories.
Right.
So I might do that in the center, the walk in the middle. That would be kind of interesting, and people could see it from the bottom and wonder what it is.
I know there's a lot of art galleries in there now, but I'm telling you, the foot traffic is still very low. But compared to the beginning of the year, the foot traffic is very, very high, and it's growing quickly. And all the parcels are going to be minted supposedly by the end of the year. So not only, and they're selling like crazy too. Like there's not a whole lot of parcels just sitting there for sale, for auction. I can guarantee you by the time we get through January 2020, those parcels might be completely gone. Ben, I don't know if he wants to like go beyond Origin City and like build out more parcels or not, because he hasn't really made a decision on it yet. But all I know is that there is a cap on Origin City as a whole right now, and there's no guarantee of anything after that. And at the same time, if it continues growing, it's popular, I mean, having anything there might be incredibly valuable. So if you had an art gallery, you might get more people walking through than you think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was my point in getting a space. I was like, I just need a
you gotta get at least
space
one,
so I don't have excessive fear of missing out.
Right.
But I'm really excited to see the different things that he unrolls. I wanna see some like social interaction aspects of text chat.
Well, are you in the Discord?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in there.
It's definitely a good place to kind of see what's going on. I know that he wants to put a river around the city, kind of like we have the Deschutes and Bend. I'm really hoping that we can kind of float it around the city.
That'd be cool.
We want to put like emotes and emojis and like different ways to interact with people. I know he's working on the voice chat still, which would be huge to voice chat with someone in world.
I think so.
It works really great with the Oculus Quest so far. I know a lot of people have been raving over that, and it feels real, and you can see your hands and your building and stuff, and it's pretty cool. Video and live streaming is going to be added relatively soon. That'll be another huge leap where you'll be able to have an event and or show a movie or show a video or just go live and have people go there instead of YouTube.
Yeah.
Like it's a huge pull to have like video on a platform like that. And you know, as VR gets more and more popular, people are going to want places to go. I mean, the only place you can really go is AltSpace on Oculus. or VR chat. That's about it. There's a few other places, but I mean, really, that's about it. What happens when everyone is using VR and they want to explore outside of the kingdom of Facebook?
Yeah.
Right? And they want to venture out into the Badlands. You got to get involved with crypto voxels. You gotta buy something while it's cheap, because it's like, I guarantee it's not going to be cheap forever.
I really got to pick up an Oculus. That's the next step.
Yeah.
I think the networking possibilities for virtual reality are going to be really cool for introverts like me.
Well, I think what I'm going to like the most about virtual reality is the podcasting aspect. Being able to say, okay, you're on the other side of the world, I'm on the other side of the world as well, we're nowhere near each other.
Host a live podcast.
Host a live podcast in a sit-down format where I can see you and you can see me and have a conversation and have it recorded with great audio quality and be able to hear me clearly using 5G so that we have low latency issues and it's crystal clear. Like, I'm very, very excited about that, and that's where I think podcasts are really going to diverge too. I think there's a lot of people that are starting to actually get into podcasts now because you see them pop up all the time. A lot of them fizzle out though. But I think a lot of them are going to miss that leap into VR and kind of into like the gaming realm of that. And so eventually I want to take my podcast that direction too, because it just seems like such an opportunity. And then within blockchain somehow, maybe there'll be some cool ways to monetize. And
there's a lot of different possibilities out there. I don't have the time to explore them all yet, but it's good to have you as a friend.
Yeah, I can definitely relay you everything. I feel like I do that quite often.
Hey, it's not a problem.
Before we wrap up and everything, I know we had quite a long conversation about all kinds of stuff, but what do you have going on in your life that you want to share with the world and the subscribers that you're doing? Are you working on any new art pieces? Are you just kind of getting rid of everything so you can head to Chicago? I mean, like, what should the people know? Like, what?
Well, it's been a whole lot of all of that. You can go to my website, lanehuitt.com. I'll have links to my podcast up there pretty soon and my artwork. And those are kind of going to be the main things for now. When I'm in Chicago, I'm either reestablishing my canvas stretching business or maybe planning on working on the podcast and my art, keeping those steady and seeing where those go.
Awesome. Sounds like we'll definitely have to follow up after Chicago and check in with you and maybe do another episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, actually, maybe I'll just come on your episode. Who knows?
Yeah, stop by
Spread the
Chicago
love,
sometime.
share the podcast love. Okay.
Cool.
Awesome, Lane. Thanks
See
for
you
coming
guys.
on.